Loud and Quiet presents Midnight Chats.
So here we are for episode 19 of the Loud and Quiet interview podcast, Midnight Chats. My name is Stuart Stubbs, and I don't normally say that bit during this introduction because I've recently realised I hate saying my name out loud, which is a problem in the modern world because I have to meet people a lot and I don't really like saying it. And normally when I say my name's Stuart to people, they always think I've said my name's Joe. And I put that down to my bad education and my Essex accent. So it's made me a bit self-conscious. I don't really like saying it, ever. But it was starting to get a bit weird because whenever I talk on these intro bits, I never say my name, and I am aware of that. So it's something I'm trying to work through. But thank you for joining me to listen to this conversation I had with Laura Marling. We're going to get into that very shortly. It's actually only been a week since the last podcast, which is unusual for us. We normally put one up once every 2 weeks. But, you know, we had this one ready to go. I had a really nice conversation with Laura, and I just thought, let's just get it up. It does mean that maybe you haven't had a chance to listen to the Ryan Adams one yet. So please do if you haven't already. And yeah, the next one may well be next week as well. So just hurry up is what I'm saying. So it's not all just the podcast over here at Loud and Quiet. We have a magazine, a physical magazine that we put out once a month. We've just sent that to print just now, and it comes out this weekend. And you can find your nearest stockist on loudandquiet.com. We have a stockist page there, but I will admit it's a little hard to find. There's a link in the footer. That's the best way to find it. But it's a free paper for those who are not aware of it just yet. And you can pick it up all around the country, all around the UK and in New York. You know that place? It's a pretty happening town. So they've got it there as well. So that's what's been taking up most of the last week since last week's podcast. Please do check it out. We're proud of it. So Laura Marling doesn't really need much of an introduction, but to give you an idea of where she currently is, what's currently going on, she's releasing her 6th album next month, which is called Semper Femina. It's important that I say that now because when I listen back to the conversation we had, it turns out that I hadn't said it once. I'm not really sure why, but I keep referring to it as your new record or the new record. But it's called Semper Femina, and it's out next month on March the 10th via Laura's own label for the very first time. That's her 6th record since 2009, and she's only just turned 27. It was actually her birthday the day before we met, so it's quite an amazing feat. But we start off talking about Laura's own podcast series, which is something she launched last year. It's called Reversal of the Muse, and is Laura's exploration in what it's like to be a woman working in music today. So far she's done 10 episodes, which is pretty much counting as season 1 of it, but there are going to be more, she tells me, and there's just some really good, interesting conversations already up on her website, so do check that out. She's had Dolly Parton on there. She's had some other artists like Marika Hackman and Shura, and but also women working in kind of other areas of the industry, including engineers, and the one female producer she's managed to find. Just one female producer. I mean, it's nuts. So check that out. That's Reversal of the Muse. That's where we're going to pick up the conversation. And yeah, please do subscribe to this podcast. Maybe you're listening to this on YouTube, or perhaps you're listening to it on our Facebook page as well. We do put the podcast up there. Basically, we don't really mind where you're listening to it as long as you're listening to it and enjoying it. But you can also subscribe via your iTunes app on your phone, the podcast app, or through Acast as well, which is who host our podcast for us. So yeah, here we go. This is number 19. Here's Laura Marling. You're the second person that we've had on the podcast that has their own podcast, or has had their own podcast.
Yeah.
Yours has got a really good name. Reversal of the Muse.
Thank you.
Has it finished now? I mean, it was a 10 series interview podcast, really, wasn't it? To explain to anyone who maybe hasn't heard it, it was an exploration into femininity in creativity, in which you were speaking to women in the music industry.
Yeah, we're going to hopefully have another at least 2 seasons exploring different artistic disciplines, because it was interesting covering music, because that's the world I know, but it'd be even more interesting to cover other disciplines that I don't know.
Sure, like film or not?
Yeah, film and TV is a place in which I feel the lack of balance of feminine influence is probably quite a significant deal, especially right now as we've got a television star running the free world. And then visual art and art. Yeah. How was the whole experience of doing the first 10 and the first series? It was good. It was as we were saying just as we picked up the mics, how much you sort of fumble through the first use of like audio equipment for that reason. And I'm familiar with using audio equipment, obviously, but I did some pretty shoddy jobs here and there. But actually, speaking to people about things that I'm interested in was very easy and pleasurable.
I thought they all sounded really great. They were all very engaging. I thought you were really good.
Oh, thanks.
Did you feel when you were doing them? Did you feel, I'm feeling like I'm handling this?
Yeah, well, I didn't think about it too much.
Yeah,
but
I think that's probably the key.
That's key, isn't it? Not being self-conscious.
Don't think about it too much. Just start chatting, I guess.
Yeah, because like for instance, I can't dance because I think about it too much.
Yeah,
but I can talk a lot and play guitar.
Sure. When you're dancing, are you thinking everyone's watching me?
Yeah, I just don't find it.
That's what stops you, kind of.
Yeah, enjoying it.
I would love to be a dancer.
Yeah.
I can't sing. I'd love to be able to sing, but I think I'd probably prefer to be able to dance. Once I'm drunk, I think I'm really good at dancing.
Yeah, good drunk dancer.
Very enthusiastic.
Yeah.
At dancing.
That's half the battle.
Yeah, but I have like zero rhythm.
Yeah, that's tough.
I think that's it's not for me.
That's a birth-given affliction as well. You can't really.
You can't learn that, right?
Yeah.
I'm currently learning the piano. Actually, I'm starting to think maybe that's a birth-given thing that I might not have.
Oh no.
In Reversal of the Muse, you interviewed some amazing people for that. You had Marika Hackman was on there, and you finished with Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris. I particularly love the one with Pamela Cole, who owns a guitar shop in Nashville. But you spoke to some really great people for it, and I suppose that the kind of one of the underlining questions of the whole thing was how you've never come across a female producer, which is quite a frightening fact, especially as someone who you've been doing this for 9 years now. And you would have thought if they were out there, you would have come across them. If one person would have come across them, it would be you. At the end of the 10 interviews, what were your findings? Did you feel like you kind of found a rough kind of answer, or did it just open up more questions than answers in the end? Yeah,
it opened up a lot more questions, and it also opened up a couple of possibilities for answers that were somewhat not disappointing but underwhelming, because we culminated. For instance, the entire series with a pop-up all-female run and operated studio. So through all the people that I'd met through making the podcast, I cobbled together a rota of amazing engineers and producers and musicians who were all female. And actually the outcome of that, the music was great, but it was no more or less great than if it had been men. So it's very difficult. There is no great difference between the way that women and men work in studios, so it's not a very sexy answer to that we've missed a whole huge amount of female creativity because of that. So actually it's a very practical thing about just offering women, giving that small positive bias towards encouraging women to take part in more technical side of music or pick up an instrument and stick to it, and that will get easier as more women start doing it.
Even though the music itself, maybe the end product, wasn't affected that much by the fact that it was an all-women studio, was the kind of the enjoyment or the atmosphere of it, different? Because that was also another question that you asked a few of the musicians that you spoke to. Most of them kind of said, well, I can't really answer that because it doesn't exist, and I would be completely shooting in the dark to even imagine what that would be like. How was it once you'd kind of set that up and experienced it now?
Well, again, it was sort of slightly it's not a great revelation that my experience in that studio for that week was exactly the same as my experience elsewhere, although in some sense I'd sort of created my own castle in which to be a tyrant in, because I'd set it all up. So it was like there was that slight variant on my experience being in a studio because I was sort of managing the studio.
Right.
And not that I was a tyrant, but I mean, like, so it felt a bit different for me in my experience because usually I'm the artiste. But I think I get asked a lot about it, and obviously our like mythical hero of the podcast is Grimes, because she comes up in every single one.
Yeah. She's always mentioned. Yeah.
And I've never met her or anything, but every interviewer who asks me about the podcast who's met her tells me what she says on this subject, and it's always really interesting. But she was saying she feels like the biggest difficulty for her is that the way that men interact within themselves means that she's not party to conversations in which she could have learnt knowledge, like oral knowledge about technical things, which sounds really antiquated and silly, but it's true. And women don't really discuss technology in that same way, or don't. I don't know. There's something fundamentally different about the way that men and women work in my mind, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But that there's something in that difference is preventing an evolution of female work in the technological field of music.
Yeah. I won't go on about I won't pick apart the whole thing, because people should just go and listen to it, because it's all up on your SoundCloud.
Yeah.
And they can find it, and I suggest that they do, because there's some very interesting points there. One of the things that you do say within I can't remember who it is you were talking to at the time, but how anxious you feel in studios. Do you still feel that? Is that an ongoing thing? You feel once you're in a studio you feel a bit anxious?
I feel sometimes, I mean, for no reason, for no sort of fault of anyone else particularly, but my dad ran a studio, so studios aren't unfamiliar environments to me, especially male dominated ones. But I feel like, I think back to when I was 16, 17, when I was first walking into, professional recording studios, and they're just strange environments, and they're environments in which I'm aware I have to be very vulnerable in. If I walk into a studio, I'm probably about to be quite vulnerable at some point, right. Even if I'm just singing backing vocals on someone else's record or whatever. So that's a natural response in that way. But I do think when I walked into Catherine Marks, who's one of the only female producers that I could find, who I interviewed, when I walked into her space, there was something different about it. And I don't know what that is. Maybe that's like an intentional bias on my part because of what I was investigating. But, we're a similar age. We got on very well. We had a lot to relate about. And I don't necessarily always have that kind of relationship with male producers that I meet. Generally we're not a similar age, and generally we're, whatever. There's silly things, but they matter. Because
your father ran a studio himself. Did you grow up in and around studios? Would you go into the studio, or was it kind of he was at work and you were at school and you never went to the studio? Or do you have early memories of the first time you walked into a recording studio and what it was like?
Well, I don't actually, because it shut down when I was 4, I think.
Right.
So okay. I really didn't really properly consciously grow up in a studio, but when I was growing up, it was a lot of the engineers who worked there that were around us, and the session musicians who would played in huge bands and that were friends of my father's. So and I understood, maybe I was born with the idea that's what studios are, this kind of realm that belongs to my father in an analytical sense. But So I had that kind of experience of studios, and we were selling off all the gear all the way through my early years. So I remember there being desks with lots of like really tantalising things to press.
To write, yeah, buttons to press.
Yeah.
That's like a dream for a child.
Yeah.
Just a desk full of buttons.
Yeah.
I completely understand why anyone would say that they feel anxious walking into a studio. Whatever you're doing there, there's something very unnatural, I think, about going into one room with a window on one side of it and people watching you kind of sing, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, singing in itself is something that terrifies me because, as we have discussed, I can't do it. But when you can sing, is it as terrifying?
Well, when I'm singing, it's fine. But I guess I'm an anxious cat anyway. I mean, like, it doesn't take much to do that, induce that in me. But yeah, when I'm singing, I'm fine.
That's when you're kind of calm in those. That's quite nice, I think.
Yeah.
It's like a meditative state, maybe.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I think I read a quote from you like forever ago, maybe. But it was about how you were saying how you are yourself. You're a very private person and quite shy. Would you consider yourself shy?
Yeah.
And yet you have chosen to do this, to do what you do, which is to get on stage, sometimes in front of a lot of people, and perform very personal songs and kind of sparse songs where it's very vulnerable up there. Have you thought about why are you doing this, or what are you doing to yourself?
Yeah, I think about that all day, every day, most days.
Do you? Yeah, you ponder it. Have you come to any kind of...
I don't know.
Answer?
I mean, I think, well, I do enjoy it, obviously. And there's some part of me that isn't exhibitionist in that way, but even though I wouldn't say, I mean, is there such a thing as an introverted exhibitionist? I guess it's possible.
There must be.
It's possible. So there's some strange, maybe slightly self-flagellatory impulse there, but I've worked out a lot of stuff through music, and it's been a really pleasant experience so far. So I can't complain. But yeah, it is vulnerable, but I have a good system of people who are, good core safety net of people who keep me safe, which is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to have.
Yeah.
Do you envisage, because you're 20, so you were 27 yesterday.
Yeah.
And you're about to release your 6th album in 9 years, which is quite some going in the modern... I said a similar thing to Ryan Adams on last week's podcast, where I think he's released he's coming up to his 16th record in about as many years. Other than him, it's quite unusual for someone to have released 6 albums in 9 years in the current kind of world of music, and the way you have to get into an endless tour and promote something for 2 years and then maybe have a breakdown for a year and then maybe get back to it after that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you can keep going forever? Do you feel like are there other things you want to do, or?
Yeah. Well, I think I could probably. I sort of something in when somebody says, "Are you going to do this forever?" makes me like want to rebel, like a teenager. Like, absolutely not. Yeah, no. How dare you even accuse me of that?
How dare you suggest that?
And so I do think that, and I think I have tried to take a step away from it before, and that was difficult. Because a lot of my identity is wrapped up in my career now, which is a weird position to be. I suppose that happens to everybody. Yeah. But I could, I guess. I mean, I don't know where music is going, so I don't know if I'll be able to. I certainly won't be able to keep making records at the rate that I have, because of simple sort of economy. And there's lots of other things I'd like to do. Yeah. But maybe they can all happen.
Do you have do you have any idea what you'd be doing if you weren't doing this?
Yeah.
Do you have like one backup or do you have one dream job of like, I'd love to be a marine biologist?
Yeah, I've got a very cool friend who's a marine biologist.
That does sound like a really good job.
She's so cool, and she lives in Santa Cruz, and she goes out diving every morning.
It's not the kind of thing you can just do a week's course in, is it? That that has to be
She had to live in Antarctica for 3 months.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure I'd be. I mean, there'd probably be something to that, but
yeah,
3 weeks maybe.
Yeah.
But 3 months is quite intense, isn't it?
In a tent.
So what would you do? What do you think? What would you do?
Well, right now I've just got into making cheese. That's been fun.
Okay.
So, like,
how do you go about making cheese? Do you need a lot of? Is cheese one of those kind of things that you can just make in your kitchen?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
You don't need loads of. It's not like beer where you need all the
gumph,
all the stuff.
I mean, making beer is quite easy too.
Is it?
Yeah, you should watch The Good Life.
Okay.
Get some inspo.
Get some tips on this.
Yeah.
So what cheese? So you've been making cheese?
I've been making halloumi. I've been trying to get halloumi down.
Halloumi's my favourite cheese.
It's the greatest cheese.
It's the best cheese.
It's kind of not cheese.
I think when people say halloumi is the greatest cheese, I think that's quite. You're not meant to say that, are you?
Not to the French.
No, it's quite sacrilegious to say that halloumi is the best cheese, but it is. But maybe it's because it's not like cheese, like squeaky rubber. But you've been making that. That's pretty good. Let's not get into the
trade secrets.
of it, because you need to keep those. Making cheese would be a good. I mean, I'm not suggesting you should give up today.
Yeah, I appreciate your concern.
But I'm just interested in other avenues to explore. Does it feel like it's been 9 years?
It does when it gets like broken down into eras. It feels a long time ago that I toured in a Ford Ka and slept in a double bass case and did, like when I think about that, how far away the chance of me doing that again is. Yeah. I'd never do that now.
Yeah.
And, there's little sort of pinpoints in it's actually 10 years.
Is it?
Yeah.
I remember seeing you at Bush Hall. And I think the only thing that was out was maybe the EP on Way Out West.
Wow.
Do you remember that show?
That was a long time ago.
It was forever ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember that? Do you remember that time?
I do. Yeah, I remember that time. That was on that tour was where I met Charlie Fink for the first time, and Winston Marshall it was my guitar player. Don't know what happened to him. He's disappeared. And
we should put a call out at the end of this to him.
Winston. Yeah.
Get in touch, Winston.
Yeah. There's still a space for you wherever you are. And I was wearing a blue t-shirt. That's what I remember.
You were wearing a blue t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that rings a bell. So now in 2017, are you living in LA at the moment?
No, I live in London now.
You're living back here?
Yeah.
Did you live in LA for a year?
Yeah.
And then moved back? Were you only there for a year?
I only very recently moved back, actually.
Okay.
I lived there for 2.5 years, then moved back to London for 6 months, and then went back again.
Right.
And now I'm back.
And are you back?
Now I'm actually
back.
What
was it that drew you? I mean, what's it like living in LA? Just you obviously liked it if you stayed for 2.5 years, and you went back.
Yeah, I went back.
It must have been. Couldn't have been terrible.
No, it wasn't terrible, but it does have a way of getting its noose around you, or claws. Maybe it's a less morbid way of saying it. But it was just so surreal. I mean, and I lived in the east side of LA, and I could see Griffith Park from my window, and it's just stunningly beautiful. And then horrifying. In the other direction, it's horrifying. And so that's it's sort of it's a satisfying, tantalizing tension that those two things, and I explored that as far as I could, and I'm very glad. I made some nice friends there, and I had some good experiences. I had lots of good experiences.
It strikes me as the kind of place that, unless you're maybe from California, it's somewhere where you go for like a couple of years, and I'm sure people say that about London who aren't from around London or near London, that it's somewhere to live for a bit, and then before it kind of drives you insane.
Yes.
Get out of there with everything intact. What drew you to moving there? And
it was just circumstance. I mean, it was slightly naive. I moved there with a lover, a boy, and we stayed. We landed in West Hollywood, and neither of us really knew what we were doing, and then ended up in East LA, and then we broke up, and then I stayed. And that was great. I'm glad, I'm glad I had that. It's like kids on roller skates or whatever who don't know how much it's going to hurt when they fall over.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Right, okay. So you're living in the east side. Was that like over at Silver Lake Way?
Yeah, I was right in the centre of Silver Lake.
I've only ever been to LA twice, but very briefly as well, for like kind of passing through or a couple of days. And it does strike me as a kind of mad place and somewhere where you kind of need to live there for a bit to kind of get it.
Yeah,
because there's just no middle to it, and it's not like a normal city at all, is it?
That's what's like so tantalising about it in another way, is that you feel like I have to get it. Why are all these people here? This is madness.
Yeah.
And in some ways there is nothing to get, and that's like, because at the centre of all that city is Hollywood.
Yeah.
The ultimate kind of bullshit construction. And so there isn't really anything to get. It's like everyone's huddled around a great secret, and in the centre there's nothing. But it's great fun while you're looking for it. But I did find ways to walk, and I liked that sense of travel or whatever, so I didn't want to lose it from my routine. And I did a lot of reading and sitting outside. I have to say, it was pretty self-serving.
Did you miss anything in particular about back here? Now that you're back here, are there things where you think, oh, I've missed this element of life? For me, I think it would be pubs.
Yeah, I think pubs.
Cheese.
Cheese.
They don't do good cheese.
They don't do good cheese. I mean, you can find it. You can find it, but it's expensive. Expensive. I missed walking. I missed history, cultural context, varying age groups. It's very difficult to find anybody who's not exactly your age in LA, because
really?
you all hang out in exactly the same place. You never see children because they don't have cars. You never see old people because they're in Glendale. And like that becomes really weird. Everyone gets stuck in this meta 20-something to 30-something mindset. It's very
with
odd.
All the same kind of anxieties about life,
and all the same sort of like stuff.
Right.
Everyone's got a house plant in a terracotta pot next to some mid-century modern furniture. It's the same.
So you recorded the new record there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that why you went back? Did you just go back to do that and then came back home?
I went back to sort of tie up some ends for 6 months, and in that 6 months we did this record.
Sure. This is the second one you've recorded there?
No, no, we did short movie here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it feel like, so this is like your LA record?
Yeah.
Does it, there are elements of it, I think, that feel like that. There are some tracks in particular, and there's a certain kind of more kind of a soul kind of feel to some of the tracks. How does it feel to you though? Does it feel like a kind of record does it feel like it's got LA in it, as excruciatingly hammy as that sentence is?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the memories of making it and writing it are all there, but I feel like there's a lot of English, and there always has been a lot of English pastoral countryside, rolling hills, and you know, actually at that time in LA, this is a year and a half ago now, El Nino had just hit and taken Los Angeles out of a 10-year drought. Right. So finally LA was springing back into lush greenery, having the entire time that I'd lived there been a very harsh, brushy, burnt orange. So there was some sense of like relief that God had remembered LA or something. Right. There. I felt it in the whole city. And so that kind of feeling was in me and in the album, I feel. Well,
I would say that a track like Wild Once, feels very like an English pastoral, and you sound very English on it.
Yeah.
But then something like Don't Pass Me By, which I think is my favourite track on the record, that feels like a kind of movie music to me.
Yeah.
They both work really well within the record. There's not a disjoint there, but they do feel like, it feels like kind of what you're saying, I guess, that there are very English kind of elements to it, and some very American elements to it.
I think I adopt a persona, you know, even in America, I adopt an English persona, you know, like, because Americans love it.
Yeah. And especially in like over that side. Yeah. On the west side.
They absolutely, it tickles them or whatever.
Do you find yourself being more English?
Yeah. It's cringe probably to watch.
Yeah, but it's It's kind of fun, right?
Quite
Because
fun.
if you go to New York, they're not as into it, are they? I found
They're
that
not sold on it.
no, and I kind of have been there before and thought, I'll do the Hugh Grant thing here,
Yeah.
and I love that.
Yeah.
Because they love that here, and they're just not impressed. And then I'm like, what am I doing wrong today? Like, normally they like this. But then you have to remind yourself you're on the other side.
Yeah.
And they're just not that into it.
They're over it. There's too many of us in New York.
That's
probably.
it, maybe, yeah.
Sick of it.
Yeah. Would you, is there any other parts of the States that you'd like to live in? Maybe not now,
It's tough now, isn't it?
not in the current state of things.
No. I mean, there's so many parts of America that I love that are so beautiful, that I've had the great privilege of seeing. So it's an extra travesty what's happening there now. But anyway, it's I mean, like, I love Oregon and Washington State, so beautiful and grey and cold and awkery. And then North New York State, so beautiful, and colours in the autumn, stunning. And then the South is like another planet.
Yeah.
And then the Midwest is this bizarre another country that shouldn't be the same country.
Yeah.
It's all amazing in its own way. So yeah, there's many places I'd like to stay more.
Yeah. So with the new record, there's it comes with a press release, as all of these things do, to help out people like me. And one of there's a little quote on there from you that says that the songs on the new record were kind of born out of a very masculine kind of time in your life. And you started off writing them as if they were from the point of view of a man. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. That is correct. Do you have something to add?
No, well,
Okay.
please just make up your own question from that.
Sorry, I really jumped the gun there. Yes, I did. And that sort of began an interesting, slightly convoluted debate in my mind about whether I needed to qualify a sort of investigatively adoring look at women with having a masculine gaze. And that very quickly becomes a very complicated and slightly pretentious question that alienates. But on a more simple level, or I came to a very simple conclusion that actually what I was wanting to do was look at women and adore them without any sense of fear or boundary. And when I sort of made that boundary irrelevant, the innocence of the records was natural, very natural.
Do you, and now that the record's done, I mean, it comes out from the time of recording this, it's in about a month's time, isn't it? It's the 10th of March.
Yeah.
At what point, when you're releasing a record, do you start to feel whatever you're going to feel about that release date in terms of excitement or anxiety or worry or dread? At what point does that kind of, are we too far from it at this point for you think, okay, the album's coming out, but it's not coming out for a bit, I'm just going to carry on going about my day?
I guess I don't suffer from those kind of anxieties.
That's good.
Yeah.
Once it's done, it's done.
Once it's done, it's done. It's always the best that I can do.
Yep.
It's always put in the hands of very talented people to polish it and make it whatever. So, yeah, no regrets.
Do you kind of see it as, because you've got 6 now?
Yeah.
Does it get easier as it goes along? Just the extra, the things that are not, because obviously when you're a musician, you become a musician to be creative. And I mean, some people don't, but most people, if they're doing it for the right reasons, it's because they innately want to express something. But then, of course, obviously with that comes things like this and having to go on tour and sign things and all of that kind of stuff. Do you enjoy it?
It's an interesting question because there's a lot of answers to it, but some aspects have got easier because of familiarity. But the doing this kind of stuff, I mean, this is a very pleasurable experience.
This is fun.
This
right?
is lovely.
This
isn't what it's like all the time, let me tell you. But that's quite hard work, and it can be sort of quite it can be a bit sort of psychologically damaging to reflect upon oneself so frequently and with so many different people. And so you have to set up the necessary care for that. So I find that bit of it challenging, but not challenging enough to put me off the great satisfaction that I get from being an artist or a creative or whatever as my job. That's a good bit of luck.
Yeah.
And touring is a bit of a battle, but I have a lovely group of people with whom I tour. So that's fun. So it's like a giant sleepover every night.
But not in a Ford KA.
Not in a Ford KA.
Those days
are
long gone.
Those are long gone.
Do you tour? Would I be right in thinking that you don't tour that much?
I don't. In comparison to most people, I tour very, very little.
And is that because you just don't really enjoy whilst you enjoy the shows? I'm completely putting words in your mouth here.
No, that's great. Carry on.
Is it that whilst you enjoy the actual show and the actual performance, you loading in and out and just the rest of it?
Yeah. You
just don't like that. That bit's just a bit. It's not worth it.
I like to be busy all the time, not necessarily doing work, but like I'm either reading or knitting, or I'm not saying it's highbrow shit, but I'm always doing stuff. But what I find with tour is that it's a lot of empty time. It's a very inefficient use of a day, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so one can do whatever one can, like go and see galleries or get a sense of the local stuff. But I've done it.
Yeah.
And so I've seen all the galleries. I can go back, whatever. But yeah, so there's bits of it I find a little bit tough, and I like to be at home, and I don't like to feel like I'm a slave to my career.
No.
And some, a lot of more sensible people than I do go out and tour their bollocks off, because that's how you sustain a career.
Yeah.
And I'm just about managing to do that without doing all the touring.
And you've got the cheese now.
Well, exactly. There's a huge gap in the halloumi market in London, and I'm ready to step in and fill that.
The cheese is such in a way,
efficient time management.
Yeah, you couldn't be doing the cheese in a KA or even a bus.
Yeah,
it just can't happen. One thing I wanted to ask you just before we end, which was another thing that it was just a little side note that I picked up from one of your podcasts. And you mentioned that you collect things from 1969.
I do. Well, I don't anymore, really, but yeah, I do.
But what's that about?
Well, sound like my therapist. There's a nostalgia. I sort of grew a nostalgia for that era.
Was it for that? But it's for that particular year, right? So
it's that particular year. But if you look at the list of albums that came out that year, it is extraordinary.
Yeah.
There's barely a dud. I mean, there's a couple of duds that are sort of charming in their own way. But something about the turn of the post-war creative psyche and the sort of turbulence in America and the new American youth and everything, it's like an incredible time. And also not just in music, but in poetry and literature. And actually, when I first moved to LA, I think it's might not be that exact year, but Joan Didion's Year of Magical Thinking, which was written around that time as well, was like people were just like looking for innocence again and looking in the most uninnocent places, and it was a cool time.
So in terms of the objects that you were collecting of that year, because I think in the podcast it's you were mentioning that it was a guitar, wasn't it? That you were
guitars, yeah.
You were going to buy a Gibson guitar, and it was from '69, and that made you think, oh, okay. What other objects were in your? You don't have the collection anymore.
No, I have. You
have the collection, but you've stopped adding to it.
It just became. I sort of had everything, because it's a couple of things. It's records, first editions of books, and Playboys from around the world.
Right. Where do you get those? Just in junk shops.
That's how I spend my time on tour. Yeah, gross junk shops everywhere, and you can find. The Playboys are in every junk shop. Don't take the ones from 1969, please, because they're mine.
If anything, if they could tweet you or something, get in touch some way, or buy it and send it to you.
Yeah, that would be so nice. It's like Blue Peter. Be lovely. So yeah, and that's it. And records. Did I say that? and guitars. I mean,
and some guitars.
Yeah.
And have you got a lot? You should get a
Got a lot.
1969 room.
I have a 69 storage unit.
Do you?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Small though. It is small.
Okay.
I don't like stuff very much, so that's my only stuff indulgence.
Right. Okay. And as someone who reads a lot, can you tip me the next book I should read? I'm fairly new to reading novels.
Yeah.
Which is quite embarrassing because I'm 34 and I've only just really started reading novels. I always used to read autobiographies.
Right.
But over the past 3 years or so, I've got really into reading.
Right.
But because I've never done it, I've been reading kind of modern classics, I guess.
Nice.
Going through the things that everyone's read,
Yeah,
like The
yeah,
Great
yeah,
Gatsby,
Yeah.
and things like that. And I've just read The Catcher in the Rye.
Classic.
You know, the kind of things that
Yeah.
I should have read by now. I'm playing catch up.
Oh, great! It's happening now. It's great.
What would you recommend? I'm guessing it's going to be something from 69.
Oh well, I can't.
It doesn't have to be. It can be. Anything.
No, I did. Well, I mean, if you haven't read any Joan Didion, it's time for you to do that.
Okay.
But that's not strictly. I mean, it's some of her stuff is fiction, but quite a lot of it's non-fiction. But the thing I read most recently that I loved, that's very pertinent to the time, is not a novel, but it's the collection. It's the final interview that John Lennon did with Playboy. That came out the day before he was shot. And it's just written very well. It's edited very well, and it's a good insight. And I enjoyed it, and I read it quite quickly because I had to zip through it because everything in it was so relevant to
what's happening now.
Yeah, and
horror.
the importance of having, even if it's a slightly controversial, I don't know, moral stance. Actually, no, I don't. No, forget that. I am no way stand by that. So yeah, no, but it's a good read.
Okay.
And I'm a big fan of Kindle. I think if you're new to reading, I think people are very snobby about that, and I read so much more now I've got a Kindle.
Do you?
Because I don't do my back in carrying around books all the time.
I am a little bit snobby about that, and I've only just started reading.
Yeah.
I just like things, I guess, that.
But hey, it's good for the environment. I don't know where Kindles are made.
True.
I don't know where Kindles are made. They might be made somewhere awful, but
I'm trying to boycott Amazon as well because of the taxes.
Do you?
I mean, I try not to buy stuff on Amazon.
Oh God, I'm really not up to speed with.
Well, just because Amazon don't pay their tax, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm saying I've ordered something on Amazon yesterday.
Yeah.
But if I can get it elsewhere,
you will.
I will.
That's so good of you to go to that.
It's just so easy, isn't it? Like you can just everything's saved in there. You can get it the next day. I totally get why Amazon has taken over the world, but the tax.
Do you publicise that opinion?
No, I shouldn't I?
Yeah, it's just your quiet battle all on your own.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think I'm going to... I should put a call out for this, shouldn't I? You're dead right.
Are you on the Twitter?
I'm on Twitter.
Yeah.
Right, let's...
Don't mention me because I didn't stand by it. I can't,
you'd have to smash your Kindle. Yeah. Get everyone to burn their Kindles. Laura, thank you very much for being a guest on the podcast.
Midnight Chats is a loud and quiet podcast. Production by Emma Snook. Music courtesy of Gold Panda. Search Midnight Chats on iTunes for more episodes and to subscribe. For more information, visit loudandquiet.com.